Good evening. Welcome to DTV, TV by Democrats for Democrats. As many of you all know, those of you all who are returning viewers, a lot of times we talk quite a bit of politics. But this show is not just about politics. We really want to make sure that our viewers are engaged and informed about the social issues, the cultural issues, the historic contributions that are impacting our community. And tonight is one of those nights. We are very, very delighted, very thrilled, and very honored to be joined tonight by Mrs. Sylvia Peters and Reverend Renee Kessler, who is the director of the Beck Cultural Exchange Center, who are going to share some information with us about an extraordinary figure who is a part of our cultural history, a part of our artistic community, who most of us maybe have never heard of, but should be a household name, and hopefully after tonight will be a name that your household knows and that you share with your family and friends. So tonight we're going to do a very special episode highlighting the contributions of Beauford Delaney to not only the Knoxville community, but to our world. He was an extraordinary artist and someone whose name should resonate throughout our community. And so we're super, super excited to have these two very accomplished women in our community who contribute so much, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much.
I think one of the best places to start is for you all to tell us, who is Beauford Delaney?
Well, Beauford Delaney was born in 1901 in Knoxville, Tennessee, and he was one of 10 children. I believe only 3 or 4 survived to adulthood. They lived on Vine Street. And as a woman that has been collecting art for years and years by African American artists, I did not know the name Beauford Delaney, even though I was in Paris when he was alive. I was chasing boys.
Not a bad pastime.
It was a lot of fun. But I didn't learn about Beauford Delaney until I came to Knoxville, and Stephen Wicks, the curator at the Knoxville Museum of Art, has been on the case, on the cultural case for years to get people to acknowledge who Beauford Delaney is and was. And that's really something for a little tiny town like Knoxville, Tennessee, to even be thinking about an African American artist. In 2016, I got a note from David Butler and Stephen at the museum, and it was 2015, December, and I was at a restaurant with a friend eating my sandwich, and the little note said, "Do you want to go to Paris? We're going to Paris to see an exhibit of Beauford Delaney's work." And I said, "Oh yes, I'm going." And my friend who was sitting there with me said, "You're not going without me."
Well, I was just thinking, I need to get better friends. My friends don't pass me those types of notes.
They passed me the note, but it didn't come with the check to Paris.
Oh, yeah.
So I stayed.
Yeah, slide it back.
Slide it back. The invitation was lovely, though.
Well, we went to Paris, and there was one less than a dozen of us. 11 of us went to Paris, these people from Knoxville. And I don't know what they expected of the citizens from Knoxville, Tennessee. I think they thought that we were going to have haze sticking out of our teeth and everything like that. But I wore my pearls. Do I have my pearls on today? I have pearls on today. I wore my good pearls, and we went to the exhibition, and we were absolutely blown away. Such masterful art. I tell you, it's been a long time since I've seen such wonderful art. And we left Paris in 2016, February, knowing that we had to do something to bring knowledge home to Knoxville, Tennessee, and to let people know about this masterful artist. And so the Knoxville Museum of Art decided that we would start a project about Beauford Delaney. And the person who was appointed the chairperson had to move town and left. And we were just kind of hanging in limbo. And so I said, I can do this. I can do this. And what we have done is we have amassed a lot of organizations together into a collaborative initiative. where everybody does what they do best. And Miss Renee Kessler, my child that I love, she was smart enough to buy the Beauford home, the last ancestral piece of property here in Knoxville. And they are going to turn it into a museum. And she's got a whole wonderful idea for making an African American cultural trail that will really, but the Beauford Delaney project has been unique because it has brought so many different people together, from churches, from the library, from the Knoxville Symphony. We had an opera that we asked the Marble City Opera Company to do. We've involved a lot of churches. We have gone to the Mexican community. We've been everywhere. We've been doing writings about James Baldwin and Beauford Delaney. They were great friends. And then the wonderful thing that we've done, I don't know if you've noticed the banners.
Yes.
The banners all over town. Actually, we've deemed it as a project a city celebrates.
Wow.
And a city celebrates a life of an African American man 101 years after the race riots.
Summer, yeah.
And he's somebody that we should all be proud of because he is the mid-century master of modern abstract contemporary painting. And even I have changed my mind. I always thought that Pablo Picasso was the man. But I know that Beauford Delaney, bless his heart, God love him.
Yeah.
There's so much good about him.
Yeah.
It's just good about this man.
And it's such and you talk about the collaboration that you're seeing around this project, and that's one of the beautiful things I think about art, is that it is a connector. It gives everyone an opportunity to see what this artist wanted us to see, and it allows us to tap into our own experiences and share that with people that we may not otherwise connect with. And it's just such a connector. And so to have an opportunity to celebrate this in our city around someone who came from our city.
Yes.
And I would love to hear a little bit about and share with our viewers a little bit about how Mr. Delaney made the path from Knoxville, Tennessee, to this to becoming this amazing artist and having this impact and being known in the Paris art community and being celebrated and having these wonderful connections with folks like Mr. Baldwin that you just mentioned. What was his path? His
mother, would you not agree, Reverend Kessler? His mother was a force. And his mother, Mrs. Renee, they did such a beautiful play the other night. And his mother said that his hands were like her hands. And she was a creative spirit. And a lot of people don't understand that even though times were hard for African Americans in segregated Knoxville, people were being educated.
Right.
They were literate. They were not people who didn't know. So the mother, in David Leaming's book, the mother talks about having silver and having china and stuff, little bits of things, and they were terribly poor because people they would work, but people wouldn't give them what they should have given them. But these were literate people. The mother was literate, the father was literate, the entire family, they were smart. And Beauford Delaney was particularly a good scholar, a good student. So after the race riots after the race riots in 1919, when they were the Red Summer, Beauford was traumatized by that. But he had been discovered by Lloyd Bransom, a white Confederate sympathizer. But Lloyd Bransom was an artist himself, very accepted artist. He painted the Knoxville flag and did a lot of things like that. He taught Beauford everything he knew.
Wow.
He taught Beauford how to deal with pastels, how to use oils, how to make charcoal drawings, how to do perspective in landscapes and everything. And he finally realized that he had taught Beauford everything that he knew. And after the race riots, Beauford was just so broken by what he saw Delia and Mr. Branson made it possible for him to leave us in 1923. It took that much time, but he went to Boston with letters introducing him from Mr. Kessler and other high important black people here in Knoxville. So that's one thing I really want people to understand is that Knoxville has always had a literate black population.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we talk about being black, people seem to feel so sorry for us. But we made do, and we made do to the very best, to the nth degree. And we had a lot to work with intellectually.
Right.
So he went up to Boston and he got right in with the intelligentsia there, the best of the African American and the best of the white population, and he was able to get into museums and schools and take classes. So his portraits became very well known in Boston. And then he stayed there 5 or 6 years and went up to New York City. And he could have made a living throughout life painting portraits, just drawing faces. And he drew a lot of faces. I believe we have a slide of James Baldwin and Beauford Delaney. Can we have that slide of Baldwin and Beauford Delaney? It was the museum owns this portrait that he was just showing of James Baldwin. Beauford lived in an apartment on Green Street in New York City, in Brooklyn, and James was very depressed because his father didn't really like him. His father was his stepfather who married his mother. And so James was an only child, and then the mother and the stepfather had 8 other children. And James was different, always bright, always smart, but his father didn't really like him, and he was depressed. And somebody said, "You have to go see Beauford."
Yeah.
And he went to see Beauford, and Beauford began to show him another way to look at the world.
Wow.
And they became friends and stayed friends until Beauford died at the age of 77 in 1979. And
Wow.
James Baldwin became a stellar writer of American political scene. And all of the researchers say that it was Beauford, our Beauford, our Beauford, our Beauford, who influenced him so much. And Beauford had another brother that was here. He's a great Joseph. Joseph lived until he was 89, I believe, or 80, something like that. But he was at the University of Tennessee. So this was a talented, smart family.
Wow. Wow. And, you know, one of the things that I always think about, so I was a history major in undergrad, and you've heard me say umpteen times, the Beck Center is one of my favorite places.
Oh, yes.
I spent a lot of time there as a young person. And I'm always interested, and I know, you know, you are always interested in finding these histories and making sure that these histories are preserved and understood and known, you know, that we don't just sit on it. But one of the things that I always think about is, how did we not know? How was this history lost? And what can we do now to make sure that this individual who contributed so much gets not only the recognition that he deserves, but also that we understand the value of what he contributed to us?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right, LaKenya. There are so many unsung heroes, right here in Knoxville. Beck is a place where African American history and culture are preserved. And trying to uncover and discover the extraordinary people from this area is going to be a lifelong journey. But it's one that we happily engage in. I don't think we stop wrestling with history until we have uncovered every stone that's out there. And to be perfectly honest with you, LaKenya, I was the exact same way with Beauford. I didn't know the family history. However, when you ask people a couple of generations removed from us, they remember the Delaney family. In fact, that's how this journey began for us at the Beck. in 2015 when this project for us really became a real live project when we acquired the property and began to uncover who was this Delaney family. If you ask people in Knoxville, most people are going to say, and again, we bought the property next door to the Beck. Beck is located at 1927 Dandridge. We share the driveway at 1935 Dandridge, which will become the Delaney Museum at Beck. And as Miss Sylvia said, it is the last ancestral home of Beauford and Joseph Delaney. Beck focuses on the story of the family because we understand, particularly in African American history, it's very difficult to talk about Beauford or anything that he became or did without talking about the dynamic of the family.
Right.
Yes.
And specifically, we talk about those matriarchs and patriarchs who came and who are the foundation for the family. Suffice it to say, we acquired the property with the intention of finding out more about this family and about how we preserve history. We don't believe that our history should be torn down or taken away.
Exactly.
We've already been through that. Beck
Yes.
was created as a result of an organization. It became an organization as a result of the act known as urban renewal, again, which many of us call urban removal, absolutely,
Yes.
which is the foundation of where Beck comes from. So we had no intention of removing anything else that has the name or the legacy of African. So everywhere we can go and identify places and people and things without having that destroyed, we want to hold on to that. Now, how do we hold on to it and honor the legacy and the history, while at the same time go forward and do something great? Patriarchs are very important. Many people in this community thought that, and say, Samuel Delaney, who's the elder brother or the patriarch, if you will, of the family, that he was the father of Beauford and Joseph. They go, oh yeah, his dad used to cut my hair, right?
Oh,
Because he
wow.
had the barbershop, which
Yeah.
was in urban renewal at 815 Vine Street, which was the original home place, which no longer stands, although there is a marker there today that you can see. And I often tell them there was a lot of years between Beauford, Joseph, and Samuel, and then there's another brother, Sterling, but suffice it to say, I say yes, but he was actually the brother, but he was the patriarch because he's going to come home after the dad passes away, actually in April of 1919, right before the race riots. Beauford's going to still be a young man, and Joseph is going to still be a young man, and they've got, he's going to pass away, and they're going to need someone to come home with the
Right.
family. So what does he do? He comes back to help take care of the family, to take care of the mother, and to take care of the younger brothers. So he does become the patriarch, and so he is going to be the one that's going to purchase that house at 1935. And that's going to become the home place because, as we know, urban renewal is going to take out the original home place. It's going to take out the barbershop, and that's going to become home.
But Miss Renee, tell them what you have found at
Yeah.
that home.
Yeah, so
It's
obviously,
so exciting.
Yeah.
It's like original.
Yeah.
It's like primary source material.
It is. In the house, amid all of the house was sort of left in somewhat of a decaying situation, and because many of the family members have since transitioned and passed on, and so we were able to unearth some great jewels in the house, so original pieces of things that would have involved the family books. We have a hymnal that was dated in 1897, signed by the author of the Pentecostal hymnal. We have a chest that was in the house. We have the picture of the family, which many people see often shown, which depicts the last few children, including Beauford and Joseph. And we say Beauford and Joseph because we talk about Joseph Delaney as well. And many people in Knoxville will remember Joseph because, as Miss Sylvia says, he'll come back home and become an artist in residency at the University of Tennessee. And so they'll remember him. Beauford will never come back to Knoxville to live after living, but he will come back to visit home and stay for short periods of time. And when he does, that will be the last home place that he will stay in with his mother here in Knoxville. And so we also have an old picture that was also found, a drawing and a rendering, very, very, very old. We also have hats and just different memorabilia that are there that was part of that original family. So being able to display that and show that. And of course, Beck has a collection of Joseph prints as well, original prints. So we're excited about the Delaney Museum at Beck because our intention with the museum is to bring the world to Knoxville, right? To
Yes.
say it's an international, so that not only do those of us who live here get the experience
Right.
to know who Beaufort Delaney was and who his brothers and his family were, and the gift that they had from this from this little community, and inspiring another generation to want to be great. But we'll have classrooms, we'll have different centers, and on the second floor, we're really excited because on the second floor, we'll have an artist in residency apartment studio. So we'll be able to bring in extraordinary artists, as Miss Sylvia says, and we'll have a place for them to stay and to really share that art and that creativity. Because Beck is crafting what we're calling the Beck Cultural Corridor, so that whole corridor will begin to embody the African American history and story. So when you come here, you can do walking tours and driving tours and bus tours of all the extraordinary sites that African Americans have, touched and had an impact on. And if you go to the Beck website at beckcenter.net, you can actually do a virtual tour of the house. So you can see what it's going to look like afterwards. So if you click on it, you can walk through each room and it will show you what the finished product's going to look like. So we're excited about that too.
That is absolutely fantastic. I'm excited about that.
Yay.
And we've talked a bit about, who Beaufort Delaney is, and we could spend hours talking about who he was as a person, but I'm very excited to be able to share with our audience some of what he created, and so they can get a sense of who he was as an artist. And we have a few images that we'll share of works that he's created that, Ms. Peters, if you don't mind, you can kind of talk us through
a lot of
few
his
of them.
Boston work we don't know so much about. Because when he moved from Boston to New York, he rented an apartment in a flat with a woman that was not of the highest character, and she took all of his work that was from Boston.
Wow.
But we know about his work in New York, and we know about his fascination with light. That was when it was beginning. Light and circles and puddles of water and things like that, geometric shapes. So this is a rendering from his New York days. And honestly, this is the kind of painting that was going on in America at the time, but mostly in Paris. The way art traveled in the 18th and 19th centuries and into the 20th century, if you really wanted to know about art, you took yourself to Paris.
Yes.
You took yourself abroad. And then in the beginning of the 20th century, New York became the spot.
It was the scene,
and
yes.
Beaufort arrived during the Harlem Renaissance. And so he has paintings of everybody and their grandmother, all the greats, all the great poets, all the great artists, Marian Anderson. He has a picture, an abstract with Ella Fitzgerald, a lot of the great Herb Gentry, a lot of the great poets, the Weldon brothers, you name it, he had it. And
It was James Baldwin, yes.
James came along, and that was an early portrait of James. And that was the beginning of Beaufort and his kind of abstractions of portraits. Beautiful, beautiful work. And I'm telling you, the museum here in Knoxville went from owning 2 or 3 of his paintings to now we have the largest collection in the world.
Wow.
And we've accomplished that since 2016,
That's
which is
fantastic.
major. We have worked on getting people to support our paintings. This is Beaufort's best kind of. To me, this is the culmination of modern mid-century, 20th century art. And we thought that Jackson Pollock, we always felt like Jackson Pollock, Pablo Picasso, Mondrian, all these people were doing this beautiful abstract work, but it was Beaufort who was leading the way.
Wow.
And Beaufort is leading us to the 21st and 22nd centuries and beyond with his work. It just makes you feel, you get goosebumps thinking about his work. And last week in Knoxville, the University of Tennessee had a scholarly symposium where we had scholars from all over this country.
The world.
The world.
Wow.
We really did. And David Leeming, who is his biographer, he was here. And it was an absolute awesome feat.
Wow.
And the University of Tennessee has been part of the Delaney project. And so we had paintings, we had pictures of James Baldwin on the campus, flags, and then we had this symposium. It was wonderful. And the scholars will be back in the summertime to do some more work on Beauford and James Baldwin's relationship. And for Knoxville, this is what it means.
Wow.
We will have a museum and a historical and cultural corridor. We think leading from our Knoxville Museum of Art all the way up that street, all the way up that hill. This is one of the last things that Beauford did after he had been in St. Anne's. He tried to commit suicide several times, and he was so poor. And so James Baldwin and the friends brought him home, and this was the first thing he did. And it's a very abstract, it has a lot of symbolism, but again, Beauford and his circles. And the collector circle from the museum went to a place in New York City, and we saw that, and we knew we had to have that. A lot of Beauford's work was stolen. It was stolen and taken everywhere around the world. And the FBI has found a lot of his work, and they have it stored in a warehouse in New York City. And that's where we were able to go and really begin our collection. And the African American community and the white community in Knoxville came together. We thought the whole museum was going to levitate up off the ground, but so many people came together and gave us money. We raised almost $750,000 in a short amount of time to get these paintings out of hock. Yeah. And Derek Spratley, who has been the executor of his estate for years, has done a gallant job of tracking down these paintings and making sure that they've been cared for and making sure that they have been cleaned and everything. And Derek has given us permission to show all these paintings and everything, and he's been a real supporter of this project. That's and worked really closely with Renee and the Beck Cultural Center. So the Shift concert, which is a national concert, the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra is putting on a presentation in March where they will have spoken word and visual images and music by Black composers. And it'll be going to the Shift concert at the Kennedy Center in New York. And then our international partner, Monique Wells, who began all this stuff, is going to have a film at the Cannes Film Festival, we hope in 2020, if not in 2020, 2021. Mm-hmm. And so we are just so heartened by what has happened with us. We have touched every community practically in this city. We have brought people together who before this didn't even speak to each other. Right. They didn't know each other existed. And the future of this project is just wonderful. And you young people, I'm expecting you to carry on, but I will die, my last breath I will take working on this event, working fantastic. On trying to get what I call a canon of African American art. We will establish the Center of Excellence here in Knoxville. So we'll have a museum, but here in Knoxville, this will be the place where people will begin to understand the power and greatness of African American art.
Excellent. Well, we are so grateful that you all are undertaking this work. I am very fortunate that I was able to see the exhibit at the Museum of Art. It is breathtaking, and I encourage everyone to go by and see that exhibit, to contact the Beck Center to find out how you can support the work that they are doing for the Delaney Museum.
We need $800,000.
They need $850,000. And the Delaney Project. And thank you, ladies, for sharing this information with us.
And you can go to the DelaneyProject.org.
The DelaneyProject.org.
And you'll find all the things that we're doing.
Excellent. Well, we hope that you learned a lot, and we appreciate you joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next week.